Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on the when, why, and how of Drupal 9. Just a couple of things before we get started. We're going to try to keep today's session to 30 minutes in length, and we'll have time for addressing questions at the end. To ask a question, please select the QA tab that's at the bottom of your screen and type your question right there in the box. We'll be monitoring the questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can today. Another note, we will be recording today's webinar and we'll share it with everyone after the fact. So if you have colleagues that weren't able to join today, please let them know that they'll still be able to get the information. So we're going to start with a super quick intro. For those who are new to oomph, we are a full service web design agency headquartered in beautiful Providence, Rhode Island, that we have employees all over the United States. And we help companies with their digital strategies, user experience design, and of course, Drupal implementation. A lot of our Drupal work revolves around complex implementations, systems integrations, commerce, multilingual, and accessibility. And our clients, many of whom are participating today, work across many different industry verticals, from healthcare, nonprofits, higher ed, cultural institutions, and more. And so I'm going to ask John to introduce himself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm John Picozzi, the Senior Drupal Architect here at oomph. Daily, my responsibility is to help our team translate our clients' business requirements into Drupal. In the Drupal community, I'm a co-organizer of the New England Drupal Camp, as well as the Drupal Providence Meetup. I'm a podcaster on the Talking Drupal podcast, and I'm also an Acquia certified site builder in both Drupal 7 and 8.
And I'm Ellen Diamond. I am oomph's Director of Accounts. I am not an Acquia certified site builder, but I have been working with Drupal since D6, and I work really closely with our clients and project teams to identify best digital strategies for their needs and to find that harmony that exists between effort and budget. So to start, John, I'm going to throw you an easy one.
Oh, I love easy questions.
When is Drupal 9 going to be released?
So every easy question needs a really complicated graphic to answer it, so I'm not going to disappoint. The quick answer is Drupal 9 will be released in early June. They're looking at June 3rd, 2020. So just under a year from now. This graphic here, you can actually see there's a lot going on in this next year and a half time frame. We see, again, the release of Drupal 9. We also see the end of life for Drupal 7 and 8. Now, typically, when Drupal 9 is released, Drupal 7 would be end of life, but they've actually extended the support, the community and security support to the end of 2021. So you can see that line, the white line here. You can also see the Drupal security and bug fix line down at the bottom, which is going to continue on until Drupal 10.
Cool. Thanks, John. So what's going to happen to D7 and D8 when D9 is released?
Drupal 7 and 8 will become end of life. And when they become end of life, they'll stop getting supported from the Drupal community. So what does end of life mean? I like to use the analogy here of the Ben & Jerry's graveyard. And basically, if you've ever been to Ben & Jerry's in Vermont, they have the graveyard at their factory, and they put all of their discontinued flavors in the graveyard. Now, that's not to say they're not making that flavor anymore, right? But that's not to say if you went to a local store and found that flavor that you couldn't take it home with you, eat it, enjoy it. That's synonymous to the end of life for Drupal 7 and 8. Your site will continue to work, so don't panic. It just will not be supported by the Drupal community anymore.
So I can still continue to enjoy my site, but is it going to impact the security of my site, or is it just mean that I can't make future enhancements?
So your site will continue to work, and you even have the ability to make enhancements. But here are the major aspects of what end of life really means. Biggest one, you're no longer going to be supported by the Drupal community at large. The community will no longer be focusing on Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. They won't be creating new modules for Drupal 7 or Drupal 8. They won't be fixing bugs for 7 or 8, updating documentation, all the things that go along with, that are supported by the community in Drupal. They won't be making any more commits to 7 or 8, so no new features will be added there. I think the biggest thing, and this kind of goes to your question, Ellen, is the security team won't be supporting Drupal 7 and 8 anymore. We'll talk in a little bit about options to keep your site secure if you're on Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. But let's go through these last two items here. You'll also see in Drupal, if you have access to your update screen in Drupal, you'll see next to Drupal in your admin panel that it's not supported. So don't be alarmed. Once it becomes end of life, that's going to happen. And it's advisable that everybody update to Drupal 9. That's the best path forward. Hence the reason we're having this webinar.
Because I like playing devil's advocate, what's going to happen if I don't update to D9?
So if you don't update to D9, you want to stick with Drupal 7 or Drupal 8, you'll have the ability to get something called commercial vendor support. They did this with Drupal 6 when Drupal 6 went end of life, and it worked really well. Essentially what it is you work with a commercial vendor support agency, and they will provide you with security updates to your version of Drupal. They'll also be able to do to make enhancements to your site if need be. But this comes with some risk. There's going to be potentially more cost associated with maintenance. Also, you're losing the benefit of the open source community. The community, the whole community backing your version of Drupal is super important. You effectively have thousands of developers across the world looking at Drupal, making it better, adding modules, adding features, finding bugs, and squashing them. So when you're on an older version of Drupal, you don't have that support, or at least not as many of those developers looking at your version. And then ultimately, you're going to end up lagging behind. You are sticking with 7 or 8. 9 is out now. 10 will be out in the future. 11, 12.
Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Well, it's a reality. You're going to end up lagging behind. So the best thing to do, again, is to upgrade.
So what I'm hearing is that my site is not going to implode. So can you talk a little bit more on why I should upgrade?
Sure. So I think there are 2 major factors as to why you should upgrade. The first one is updates in dependencies. When Drupal 8 was released, it was rewritten from Drupal 7. And we decided as a community that we were going to rely on other projects to provide certain features and services to Drupal 8. This made a lot of sense because these were aspects that we didn't necessarily have to maintain. The other communities were maintaining them, which was awesome. The largest of that is Symfony. And that's really driving the end of life for Drupal 8. Drupal 8 depends on Symfony 3. And there's also jQuery in Drupal core, CK editor. If you've ever used a WYSIWYG editor, that's run by CK editor. And then the templating engine in Drupal 8 is on Twig. So with the release of Drupal 9, we're looking at an update to Symfony 4 or 5. They haven't nailed that down yet. And then hopefully a better Twig 2 support. It's currently possible to use Twig 2 in Drupal 8, but we're hoping that there's better support for that in Drupal 9. So overall, one reason to update is better dependency support. The other aspect of it is the removal of deprecated code. So as I said, Drupal 8 was a rewrite of Drupal 7. With that rewrite, some legacy code kind of got brought forward to be able to make the transition a little bit easier. You can see in this graphic, Drupal 8.9 here, they're deprecating some code and then adding new solutions to still provide the same services that deprecated code provided. And at the bottom of that diagram, there's Symfony 3 there. When we move to Drupal 9, deprecated code is removed. New solutions are there and ready to support those deprecations. And then Symfony 4 or 5 is replaced.
So I'm hearing a lot about deprecated code, and I'm wondering if you can actually explain what that is to everybody.
I can, but so can Wikipedia. The definition here of deprecation does a really great job of explaining what it is, surprisingly. So it's a noun, reduction in the value of an asset with the passage of time, due in particular to wear and tear. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're time's moving on. We're getting into Drupal 8. We're getting into Drupal 9. Code that was in Drupal 7 pushed forward to Drupal 8 is now ready to be removed from Drupal 8 for Drupal 9. They say that it's deprecation is the discouragement of use, and we'll talk about that in a little bit with Drupal 9 and how that's going to affect your upgrade process. But those deprecations, yeah, we definitely don't want to be using those in our current code. And then the last line there says it can also imply that a feature will be removed or discontinued entirely in the future. This is exactly the case with Drupal 8 to Drupal 9. So
that's great. Thanks, John. So if I have a D7 site now, why shouldn't I just wait to upgrade until D9 comes out and just bypass D8 entirely?
So again, I think there are two major takeaways or reasons that you should upgrade. One is new features. Drupal 8 had a bunch of new features added to it over its lifespan. First of all, I think in Drupal 8.8 we're looking at a better media library, which is huge. In Drupal 7, you required contributed modules in order to have the same kind of media library experience that with Drupal 8.8 will hopefully be in core. It's in core now, but it's experimental still. Again, with 8.7, which was just released, you have Layout Builder, which is an inline content editing and layout tool. And this basically gives content editors the ability to make really dynamic pages by just dragging and dropping blocks along their page layout. So super powerful tool. With Drupal 8, you had improvements to the cache system. So cache tags were added to Drupal 8. The cache system was actually rewritten so that instead of that invalidating a whole page or a whole site cache, you could actually invalidate certain sections of the page or certain pages themselves via the cache tags. Last improvement is to the translation system. Drupal 8, again, rewrote translation system, and it is so much easier to use than Drupal 7. So if you're doing a multilingual site, you'll definitely see improvements with the fact that the translation system is easier to use and new and improved. The other aspect is an easy upgrade path. So we've talked about this a little bit, but the goal here is that the last version of Drupal 8, so 8.9, will be exactly the same, minus the deprecated code, to Drupal 9.0. And that is going to make the upgrade path super easy from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9.
So what features are going to be coming in D9? What fabulous additions?
So there will be no new features to Drupal 9.0. The first feature release of Drupal 9 will be 9.1. However, they haven't released a roadmap yet to tell us what new fabulous features are going to be coming in Drupal 9.
So we need to be patient?
We need to be patient. exactly.
Okay, so for those on D8, should they update to D9 right away, as soon as it comes out?
So yes, obviously this slide is telling you yes, but in reality, it's more of a yes, but. With the upgrade from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9, again, we've talked about deprecated code, right? So what we want to do is, if we're planning an upgrade from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9, we want to make sure that we're not going to be affected by the code deprecation. So deprecated code could live in your contribute modules and your custom modules. I would say at this point, you want to focus on your custom modules, but the Drupal community is doing a great job of making sure that the contributed modules are up to speed. Dwayne McDaniels from Pantheon did a study of a large amount of Drupal modules. He might have done, actually it says right there, 7,000 plus modules. There you go. And he found actually that 48%, just under half, needed no update for deprecated code for Drupal 9. And then, 35% had 1 to 5 fixes needed, and then 17% had 6 or more, which are great numbers. Half the modules out there are ready to go. And the other half, the fixes are really, I'm using air quotes, but minor. So they could be ready to go as soon as Drupal 9 is released as well.
That's great to hear that there's already been so much work. So how do I move forward? How does anyone move forward with the upgrade process?
So I think the best way to move forward is to upgrade to Drupal 8 now. You're going to benefit from new features in Drupal 8 that you don't have if you're running Drupal 7. And then you're also going to benefit from the upgrade path being easier from 8.9 to 9.0. You see this graphic here of the straight line with the points on it for 8 and for 9. Well, previously to Drupal 8, or previously to this update, when you had Drupal 5, Drupal 6, Drupal 7, all of those versions were actually copies of one another. So they would they took 6, they copied it and said, okay, this is going to be Drupal 7. So there was really no upgrade path there, as you're going to see with 8 to 9, where you're going to be able to upgrade, and the last version of 8 is going to be the first version of 9.
This sounds really approachable. So, but going back to deprecated code, how do I know if my D8 modules include deprecated code? So
no webinar would be complete without a video, and here's ours. The Drupal community is here to help. You always hear, oh, there's a module for that. Well, in this case, that's true as well. The upgrade status module for Drupal 8 has been updated to include a command line tool by Matt Glauman called Drupal Check. And don't worry, you don't have to get on the command line to use it. There's a user interface right within Drupal that can be used. And basically what it does is it scans all of your custom and contributed modules to see if there are deprecations. If there are deprecations, it'll pop up this page, show you the report, and allow you to see what code is being deprecated. So your development team can run this. If you have access within your Drupal backend, you can run this, and as you can see right there, they're downloading the report, so that way they can share it with whoever they need to share it with.
That's great.
All right. Well, I know you have a ton more questions, so we're gonna get to the lightning round. These are gonna be pretty quick questions.
I'm teeming with questions. Okay. First one, which I know is on everybody's mind. How much time is it going to take to upgrade, or in plain English, what is this going to cost?
So that's a great question. And the answer is it depends, right? So a couple of factors. How much customization have you done to your Drupal site? in the way of custom code. How complex is your Drupal site? How many features are we going to have to test to do the upgrade? We've been talking about how easy the upgrade is from 8 to 9, but you also want to make sure you test your website fully. And if there's a lot of custom code under the hood there, we want to make sure that there's no deprecated code in there that could affect clean upgrade.
Okay. So what about the front end of my site? I love how it looks. After an upgrade, is it going to change?
So if you're on Drupal 8 now, going to Drupal 9, it shouldn't change, or if it does, they're probably going to be very minimal updates that are needed. But if you're on Drupal 7, you will need to rebuild your theme, as the theming engine has changed between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8.
Okay. And we were talking a lot about the ease of D8 to D9. How does somebody upgrade from D7?
That's another great question. If you are on D7 now, you're going up to 8, you're going to have to do a rebuild. So much has changed between 7 and 8, or even 7 and 9 for that matter, that a rebuild will be necessary. And don't worry, the Drupal community has your back on this. They have actually built into Drupal 8 core migration API that will help you to migrate your content. Your development team can build migrations and help you move that content over to your new website.
Okay, thanks, John. So we were going to make some time for questions now. I know that we're a little bit over where we intended. I do have one question from Kathy. If I don't have the budget now for a rebuild of my D7 site, what can I get started with, though, to start planning internally?
I think the easiest thing there is to start talking to your development team. Start the conversation early. Say, hey, we don't have the budget right now, but our plan is that we are going to start an upgrade, at this point in time. And then what that can do is that can kind of get you thinking about, the upgrade. Also, a wish list, right? To be able to say, hey, there are items in my current site that don't work as well as I think they could, or we have different business goals. So starting that wish list and saying, hey, when we do the upgrade, can we work these into that upgrade in some way, shape, or form? It'll really help your team to kind of know what your vision is for the future.
Cool.
And then from the content standpoint, Ellen, I'm sure
That's
you
right.
probably have some insight on that.
I do. I would suggest anybody who is thinking about it to move forward with a content inventory and take an audit of everything that you have on your site. Not only all the content itself that natively exists within Drupal, but all the assets that you may have, and whether you will want those to come over to the new site, because that would certainly impact the migration plan. So that's a good start.
Yeah, and doing those content inventories can really be helpful to understand what content needs to be migrated.
Yep.
And allow your development team to focus really on content that is being migrated versus content that may not need to be migrated.
Okay, so doesn't look like we have any other questions right now. I just want to remind everybody again that we are recording today's webinar, so we will share it with everybody. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can see both my contact information and John's information is up there on the screen. We would love to hear from you and happy to talk to you further about a D9 upgrade. And I want to thank everybody for participating today. I also really want to thank John for sharing all of this great information with us. I know that I was thinking it was going to sound a lot more intimidating than it actually is. So I think that this was awesome. Thanks, everybody. And we look forward to sharing the recording with you. And I hope you all have a great and awesome Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.